Her heart stops, and her brain receives no more blood. She leaves her body, and while exploring, discovers an object she couldn't possibly have seen on the far side of the hospital. She describes it in detail. Was there such an object? Yes. Let's investigate, and welcome to the channel. We're in the busy city of Seattle, Washington, where Mary is visiting friends on a typical night of April 1977. All is well until suddenly she has a massive heart attack. She's rushed to the cardiac care unit in Harborview Medical Center. She's unconscious on arrival. At some point, after regaining consciousness, she meets Kimberly Clark Sharp, a social worker who's assigned to provide assistance with finances and reassure Maria. Maria is understandably scared, but kept under observation, and eventually starts to look and feel better, especially with Sharp at her side. Now, they're even becoming friends. On the fourth day, the sound of a familiar alarm tells Sharp there's trouble. Someone is undergoing cardiac arrest. It's Maria. From that moment on, there's something akin to controlled chaos around Maria, where everyone knew exactly what to do. The medical staff is able to revive Maria pretty quickly, and she is in stable condition at this point, even though she's unconscious again. Hours later, Sharp is called again to visit Maria. Maria is now wide awake, but so agitated that the nurses are afraid she might go into cardiac arrest yet again. When Sharp gets there, she sees what the agitation is all about. Maria is extremely excited about something. While she struggles a bit with her English, her native language is Spanish, she points to the ceiling and manages to convey to Sharp that she had been there, right there, watching the room from above. Sharp tries to calm Maria down. These so-called near-death experiences are common in the hospital, and is probably an hallucination. It's important to note that Sharp had had her own near-death experience 7 years before, but was not sure what to make of it. What unfolds from this point on means much to Sharp. If Maria had had a true near-death experience in which she left her body somehow, this would validate Sharp's NDE. This is what Maria tells Sharp next. While on the ceiling, she sees the doctors and nurses panicking around her body. She also sees a machine that monitors her vital signs. But that machine is printing long streams of paper, and in the mayhem, someone kicks the paper under the bed. But that's not all. Maria, or let's say her consciousness, leaves the room and the medical staff and sees the hospital from outside, where she notices that the road leading up to the ER curves and is one way, and the entrance to the hospital has doors that open inward instead of outward. At some point in her out-of-body journey, she sees something unusual outside a third-floor window on another side of the building, a single, large, dark blue tennis shoe. It sits on the ledge, and she notices that the side near the small toe is worn, and a white shoelace is stuck neatly under the sole. If you were Sharp, the social worker, what would you do at this point? Well, now at least you have something to go on. If Maria really saw that shoe, you'd go looking for it, wouldn't you? It would be really strange if you actually found it, and if you don't find anything, you lay the matter to rest. So Sharp first goes outside to see if she can find the shoe. But from where she's standing, the window ledge on each floor blocks the view. So she goes back inside and goes from room to room. This takes time because there are so many different rooms. She also has to excuse herself to each patient occupying the rooms. Eventually, in one of them, there's so much clutter in front of the window that Sharp has to press her face against the glass to take a peek. You never know. And there it is, the shoe. It sits on the ledge right outside the window. Sharp feels faint. It couldn't be. But eventually, she opens the window and she has to remove the shoe to see that it is in fact worn near the small toe and that the shoelace was stuck under the sole, exactly as Maria described. Both of these observations were not possible from inside the window because the worn toe and tucked shoelace were hidden from view on the side of the shoe facing away from the building. Did Maria's consciousness really meet that shoe on that ledge from a point of view outside the building? Sharp says yes. It was the only way Maria could have known about the shoe. This gives Sharp's own NDE real meaning, and many years later, she publishes her NDE experience that includes Maria's NDE in the first chapter of her book, After the Light, What I Discovered on the Other Side of Life That Can Change Your World. Sharp is adamant that Maria knowing about the shoe could only mean one thing, that Maria had left her body while she flatlined. But could there be a simple, down-to-earth explanation for Maria's NDE? Before we discuss this, give me a favor. If you're not already subscribed to the channel and you like this type of content, go ahead and subscribe and give me a thumbs up to show your support. The students in 1994, 17 years after Maria's experience, Sharp is a clinical assistant professor at the University of Washington, where she receives a phone call from two students. They're really interested in the case, and Sharp, encouraged by their enthusiasm, agrees to meet with them at the hospital. When they arrive, they pressure her to identify the exact window where she had found the shoe. She is no longer sure which one it is. It's been so long, 17 years. But the students really put on that pressure. So she finally points to one, even though it may not be the right one. Now they want to go inside. In fact, they insist. But Sharp no longer works there and cannot take them inside without proper authorization. Sharp also says that she could have introduced them to some of the staff familiar with the incident, but they never ask. Here's what the students did after Sharp leaves. The students somehow get past security and trespass inside the hospital rooms, putting, according to Sharp, patients with compromised immune systems at risk. They locate the window identified by Sharp, place a shoe on the ledge, and determine that they can clearly see it from the window. In fact, they can see the far side of the shoe where the worn part and the shoelace would be. Remember, this is happening 17 years later, and this may not be the actual window. Sharp says, in fact, that the window all had different configurations, and when Sharp discovered the shoe, the window had clutter in front of it that prevented getting too close, so that at the time it made it quite difficult to take a peek at the shoe. The students never took that in consideration, but here's the kicker. The students then exit the building and determined that the shoe was actually visible from outside, implying that either Maria or someone else had seen the shoe. But I have a few things to say about the shoe the students placed on that ledge. It took a whole week for someone to notice the shoe and remove it, which would in fact mean that the shoe was not as visible as they claimed. Also, note how they placed the shoe conveniently near the edge to increase its visibility. And this photo, even when zoomed in, doesn't make a compelling case for an object that stands out as to be instantly spotted. Could Maria still have seen the shoe as she arrived at the hospital? Would a patient reported as unconscious on arrival be able to peek outside a closed ambulance to detect a shoe on a distant ledge? And did I mention this was also at night? There's got to be some other explanation. 2 years later, Sharp receives notice that the students published a paper in the Skeptical Enquirer. They had pretended to be interested in Sharp's account of the events. The real purpose of their visit? To debunk Sharp's interpretation of Maria's experience. Sharp is devastated and feels betrayed. This causes Sharp to publish in her own defense in the Journal of Near-Death Studies. So let's see who wins this debate. The students conclude that someone on the hospital staff may have seen the shoe on the ledge and commented on it within earshot of Maria. It is possible that hearing something while unconscious could lead to a visual reconstruction mistaken as a memory. Remember, though, that Maria's English was poor, so that understanding the exact details of the shoe would have been very difficult. Maybe someone detailed the shoe in Spanish, but if someone had seen that shoe before Maria woke up, why is it that no one removed it before Sharp found it? What about the other details reported by Maria? According to the students, Maria might have been familiar with the medical equipment that she reported seeing during her cardiac arrest. Sharp does not deny this. It's possible that Maria visualized the room from memory. Sharp also acknowledges that Maria could have constructed a scene where she floated above her body and saw medical staff working on her. The reason for this is that hearing is often the last sense to fade when going unconscious, as Sharp correctly points out. So Maria might have heard enough to possibly create a visual image of what was going on. But Maria could not have known about the paper spitting out of the machine, which was an EKG monitor, because, in Sharp's own words, no one ever educates a cardiac patient to that level of detail. There is absolutely no way that she could have known about the paper. It was not taught, it was not discussed, and it is never shown in television and movies depicting cardiac arrest. Remember, this was in 1977. She's right. But that's not all. Sharp says that Maria was also correct in pointing out that, during reviving attempts, someone on the medical staff did in fact kick the printing paper under the bed. It's difficult to see how she could have known about this specific detail. What about Maria's ability to describe the entrance to the hospital? According to the students, logic dictates that doors open inward in order to rush patients in. So Maria could have reached that conclusion easily. The students argued that she also could have deduced that the street leading to the entrance was one way from a sense of traffic flow, and that she may also have seen the entrance reflecting of vehicles passing in front of the hospital. Sharp says that Maria was hooked up to several IV lines, making it quite difficult for her to simply walk up to the window. Let's say that somehow Maria did walk up to that window. This is what the entrance to the hospital looked like. Maria's room was on the second floor, immediately above the entrance. Even if she could have walked up to that window and opened it to lean out, there is a roof right above the entrance that completely blocks the view. Here's the thing. At some point, you have to take a step back and look at what is being reported. Either Maria saw the shoe on the ledge and the other details she reported during an out-of-body experience, or she did not. Neuroscience points to abnormal activity in the temporal lobe and associated areas to explain away the out-of-body experiences in NDEs as hallucinations. While these do occur, what it does not explain is the knowledge that near-death experiences seem to acquire about the environment. This is why it is of paramount importance that NDEs, if real, are verified with knowledge the experiencer could not have had. In this regard, the shoe is particularly intriguing. Potentially damaging to Sharp's story, though, is that she never produced the shoe, even though she says she had it in her possession, buried somewhere in her garage. We also do not have any information about who Maria was. Of course, patient confidentiality might prevent this. The question is really this: would Sharp lie? She did write a book on her own NDE. Would a story like this help her convince her readers that her own NDE was real? Sharp says that Maria's experience actually helped her understand her own NDE. So this may be what simply gave her the courage to write the book. We may never know, but you can see why she can be so easily dismissed by anyone remotely skeptical of her story. In the end, it comes down to whether you believe Sharp or not. Sharp is a professional. She's a retired clinical assistant professor of social work at the University of Washington. Her story has never changed, and she comes across as a well-meaning individual in interviews. I personally hesitate to discredit her. If Sharp is telling the truth, we have only two possibilities. The student's version. Maybe Maria was extremely confused, formed false, highly detailed visual perceptions based on logic, overhearing conversations while unconscious, getting a sense of traffic flow to determine that the driveway was curved in one way, walked up to the window while severely ill and hooked up to IV lines, seeing through a roof the reflections of the entrance on vehicles to determine that the door swung inward, and imagine medical equipment based on information she must have had about them, including specific details involving chart paper being kicked under the bed and the hidden side of a dark blue shoe on the ledge. Or Sharp's version. Maria had a true out-of-body experience during her NDE. Among the millions of near-death experiences in the US alone, Maria's experience would be typical, except for that shoe. And in this regard, although more rare, she would join the ranks of others who fully described objects they could not have seen. So this story is not that incredible. But short of having more information that would confirm Maria's extraordinary NDE, I will have, for now, to leave this story as unresolved, but interesting and certainly strange. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, skeptical minds and believers alike, you decide.